After the family reunion ended, I walked into my apartment with the leftover casserole balanced in one hand and an ache I couldn't quite name sinking into my chest. My parents had hugged me stiffly, my father barely meeting my eyes, and my sister Marissa had worn that same knowing smirk she'd had on since dessert, like she was holding on to a private joke I wasn't meant to understand. The whole night had felt off thick with whispers and glances. They thought I didn't catch a familiar pattern in a family where I'd spent my entire life being the one on the outside of the inside jokes. I kicked off my shoes, set the casserole down, and sat at my kitchen table to unwind. On instinct, I opened my banking app expecting the comforting sight of the savings I'd fought years to build. But the moment the screen loaded, something inside me snapped. My balance stared back at me, zero, completely empty. I hit refresh once, twice, like that could bend reality. The same hollow number glowed back. My hands went ice cold. I heard Marissa's voice in my head, her laugh sharp as glass. Before I could talk myself out of it, I called her. She answered immediately, speakerphone echoing laughter behind her. She crossed her arms, I could picture it even through the phone, and said, "We needed it more than you." Something inside me froze solid. I steadied my voice and whispered, "Then you won't mind what happens next." I hung up. For a second, my apartment went silent. Then a loud bang shook the back door and the walls trembled around me. I stood completely still, heart pounding against my ribs. It sounded like someone had slammed into the frame hard enough to rattle the glass. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe as I stepped backward toward the kitchen counter. My fingers closed around my phone automatically. I didn't dare move closer to the door. The reunion, the looks, the way my parents avoided my questions about the business, everything crashed together in my mind. Had one of them followed me home? Was this some sick continuation of their stunt? The apartment stayed silent. Too silent. My own breath was loud in my ears. After nearly a full minute, my legs stopped shaking enough for me to inch toward the living room window. I lifted the curtain just slightly, hoping for headlights, a shadow, anything. Nothing but darkness. The kind that presses in from all sides, leaving you unsure where the danger even is. I locked the back door twice and pulled the chain across. Then, because I didn't feel safe, I dragged a heavy bar stool in front of it, as if that could stop whatever had just hit it. My hands were trembling too hard to hold the stool properly. I couldn't stop replaying Marissa's voice in my head. "We needed it more than you." Like my entire life was some kind of family bank account they were entitled to withdraw from whenever they wished. My phone buzzed in my palm. A new text from her. "Don't get dramatic. It's family money." My stomach twisted. Then another message. "You'll thank us later." The arrogance in those words lit something dangerous in me. Something that felt a lot like anger cutting through the fog of fear. I closed the messages and opened my banking app again, this time navigating to my transaction history. The timeline made my stomach drop even further. Withdrawals nearly every week for the past month. Same days. Same hours. All when I was at work at the family business. My entire savings stolen right out from under me while I thought I was being responsible, independent, careful. A cold realization hit me. Someone had been planning this. Someone who knew when I wouldn't be home. Someone who knew my schedule, my habits, maybe even my passwords. I backed away from the kitchen table and paced across the apartment, hands on my head. Everything in the reunion replayed in slow motion, my mother whispering, my father's stiff posture, the way everyone went quiet when I walked into the kitchen. That small drawer someone had shut quickly when I entered. Marissa's smirk when I mentioned my plans for the next week. None of it was innocent. I felt stupid for not connecting it sooner, but betrayal blinds you even when you expect it. My breath shook as I walked to my bedroom. I flipped on the light, then opened the closet where I kept a small fireproof lockbox. Inside were years' worth of bank statements, tax documents, old passwords, scribbled on sticky notes, and receipts for everything from my car down payment to my student loan payoff. I dragged everything out onto my bed and sat cross-legged, amidst the pile, forcing myself to focus. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. But then I found it, a crumpled envelope addressed to me from the bank, postmarked 3 weeks ago. I never opened this. I never even received it. Someone had taken it before it reached my hands. I smoothed the paper open. Inside was a letter stating there had been a suspicious login attempt on my account. The letter recommended calling the bank immediately. My chest tightened. Someone intercepted this on purpose. Someone didn't want me to see it. As I set the letter down, something caught my eye, a faint smudge at the corner. Pinkish glossy. My sister was the only one who wore that shade of cheap drugstore nail polish. My throat closed. Each detail, each coincidence was becoming a pattern too perfect to ignore. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marissa. Don't ruin this for everyone. Everyone. The word echoed like a scream. I thought of the family business in Mount Pleasant, how my father claimed everything was fine, how he'd asked me twice to loan him money last month, how Mom had scolded me for not being supportive when I said I needed to think about it. My hands clenched into fists. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my recent calls. My attorney's name, Robert Hale, sat near the bottom of the list. A man who once told me, after I helped him with a charity event years ago, if you ever need something, call me. I mean it. I stared at his contact for a long moment. Then the knock at the back door replayed in my mind, the texts from Marissa. The empty bank account. The stolen letter, the smudge of nail polish. I tapped his name. The phone rang once. Twice. Then his voice, warm and steady, cut through my panic. Lauren, it's late. What happened? And everything inside me finally broke open. They took everything I whispered. My sister, my parents. I think they planned it. The line went silent for half a breath. Then Robert said, voice sharp with purpose, Don't move. I'm coming over. And Lauren, don't talk to them again. As the call ended, I exhaled a shaky breath I didn't know I'd been holding, staring down at the pile of documents scattered across my bed. For the first time all night, I felt something close to clarity. If my family wanted to treat me like a resource they could drain, they were about to learn who I became when pushed too far. I stood, wiped my face, and waited for the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Not from my sister this time, but from the man who would help me fight back. Robert arrived 20 minutes later, knocking twice in that calm, measured way he always had. When I opened the door, he took one look at my face and stepped inside without asking. He didn't waste a second. He set his briefcase on my kitchen table, glanced at the documents scattered across the bed through the open door, and said quietly, Tell me everything. From the start. I sat down, still shaky, and walked him through the reunion, the looks, the empty bank account, Marissa's words, the knocks at my door, the intercepted letter. My voice trembled at first, but as I laid out each detail, the tremble hardened into something colder, clarity. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Robert listened without interrupting. When I finished, he tapped his fingers against the table for a moment, processing. They've been surveilling you, he said finally. Not in the dramatic movie sense, but someone has been monitoring your schedule, your habits, your banking activity. And the letter, he held it up by the corner. That's obstruction. Someone took your mail intentionally, probably from your parents' house if it was sent there first, but we'll confirm. I rubbed my forehead. My sister's nail polish. That smudge on the envelope. She must have opened it at Mom and Dad's. Robert nodded. It wouldn't be the first time family has committed financial exploitation, but this is organized. He stood, took out his phone, and snapped a photo of the letter, then another of the envelope. Then he photographed the bank statements still glowing on my laptop screen. His movements were efficient, practiced. I'm calling someone, he said, already scrolling. A forensic investigator, I trust. Is that necessary? My voice cracked. I wasn't used to thinking of my family as criminals. Robert looked at me not unkindly. Lauren, they stole your entire savings. Someone forged your authorization. Someone rerouted your alerts. Someone entered your home or mailbox. That's not a family argument. That's a planned scheme. I let the words sink in. Scheme. My parents. My sister. Together. He stepped aside to take the call, speaking in low-clipped tones, then returned to the kitchen table. David Kim will be here first thing in the morning. Digital forensics. He'll dig into login logs, IP addresses, alert rerouting anything he can pull from your devices. I stared down at my hands. They didn't feel like mine. Robert reached across the table, the lawyer facade softening for just a moment. You're not alone, and you're not imagining this. The reassurance made my throat tighten. I nodded once. He stood and began gathering the scattered documents into piles. I need everything. Bank statements, old passwords, tax forms, any suspicious mail or emails, anything that looks off, even if you think it's irrelevant. We worked in silence for nearly an hour. I pulled out dusty binders from my closet. Robert checked dates, scanned documents with an app, and flagged pages with sticky notes. When we finally stepped back, the kitchen table was covered in a painstakingly organized timeline of my financial life. He exhaled softly. You've always kept good records. That will save us. I leaned against the counter, exhausted. What do we do now? We preserve everything, he said. No contact with your family. No responding to messages. If they show up, do not let them in. You call me or the police. Make sure your doors stay locked. I'm filing an emergency report with your bank as soon as I get home. A knot tightened in my stomach. Do you really think Marissa would show up here again? Robert paused only a second before answering. Yes. The honesty didn't scare me. It validated everything my instincts were screaming. Before he left, he walked through my apartment, checking the windows, testing the locks, making sure everything's secured properly. It was strangely comforting. When he reached the back door, the one that had shaken earlier, he leaned in close to inspect the frame. There's a dent here, he murmured, pointing. Fresh. Someone hit it hard. A chill rippled through me. Do you think they were trying to get in? I think they were sending a message, he said. Or they panicked when they realized you'd seen the account balance. He pulled out his phone and took more photos. We're documenting everything. He left shortly after midnight. I watched him drive away from behind the living room curtain, the streetlights casting thin amber lines across his car. My apartment felt too quiet once he was gone. Too exposed. I checked the locks again, front door, back door, windows, then pulled the bar stool back in front of the back door just in case. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail from the reunion. Marissa telling me I overreacted when I asked about a discrepancy in the business account last month. Dad's evasive answer about a temporary shortfall. Mom's sudden insistence that I trust the family. Then the laughter in the background when Marissa answered the phone tonight. They really thought it was funny. Around 3 a.m, I finally drifted off. I woke before my alarm to the buzz of a text notification. My pulse spiked until I grabbed my phone. A message from Marissa: don't involve outsiders. You'll make this worse. I stared at it until the words blurred. Another text. We can fix this if you stop now. Fix this. As if they hadn't gutted me financially. As if I were the one breaking the family. I didn't answer. I deleted nothing. Every message was evidence now. Every threat. Every attempt to manipulate. When I walked into the kitchen, the table full of documents looked like a battlefield map. My bank account might be empty, but the truth was starting to take shape. At 8 o'clock sharp, a knock sounded at the front door, measured, polite, deliberate. Not like the bang from the night before. I opened it to find a tall man with rectangular glasses and a gray messenger bag slung across one shoulder. Lauren Carter, he asked. Yes. He offered a firm but gentle handshake. I'm David Kim. Robert filled me in on the basics. May I come in? I stepped aside, heart beating fast for a new reason, hope mixed with dread. David walked in, took one sweeping look at the documents spread across the kitchen table, then at my laptop, my phone, even the router tucked under my bookshelf. He nodded to himself almost thoughtfully. "This will be messy," he said, setting his bag down. "But we're going to get answers." I swallowed hard. Do you think this was my sister?" David met my eyes. His expression was calm but unwavering. "From what Robert described, yes. But I don't think she acted alone." My throat tightened. He opened his bag and began laying out equipment cables. A portable hard drive, a small device that looked like a cross between a scanner and a calculator. "In cases like this," he continued, "there's always more than one set of hands. And your family seems coordinated." Coordinated. That word scraped across my nerves. David gestured for me to sit. "Let's begin with your phone logs and the bank alerts. The more we establish now, the stronger your case becomes." Strong. Case. Words that didn't belong in my life until my own sister emptied my savings. I sat down across from him, pulled my laptop closer, and opened the records. As he connected his devices and began extracting data, he said, "Lauren, I need you to understand something. Digital footprints don't lie. People do. Files do not." I nodded slowly. He added, almost gently, "We're going to find out exactly who did this, and how deep it goes." For the first time since the reunion, I felt something other than fear or anger. I felt ready. David worked with a quiet intensity that filled the apartment more effectively than any conversation could. He connected my phone to his device, first typing quickly as streams of data scrolled across his screen. I sat across from him trying to stay still, but my hands kept twisting together in my lap. I wasn't used to being examined like this, every login, every timestamp, every digital trail of my life laid bare. But if it led to the truth, I could stomach it. "Your phone is clean," David murmured after several minutes. "No spyware, no remote access tools. Whatever they didn't get in through your phone." I exhaled shakily. One small relief. But he added, and the breath caught in my throat again, "Someone still accessed your bank account from a device that wasn't yours." He turned the screen toward me. A series of entries were highlighted in red. "These are the unauthorized logins." The details were brutally clear. Device type Windows laptop. Location 2 miles from your home. Repeated access 8 times over 4 weeks. Time of access always between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. My stomach twisted. "Those are my work hours." "Exactly," he said. "Someone watched your patterns. They knew when you'd be gone." I felt my pulse climb into my throat. 2 miles. Marissa lived 2 miles away. David clicked to the next page. Now this part is concerning. The router log showed a foreign MAC address connecting to my Wi-Fi twice on 2 separate Thursdays. Both times fell within the same hours as the unauthorized withdrawals. "But I wasn't home those days," I whispered. "You were at work," David confirmed. "This device could only connect from inside your apartment." Heat rose up the back of my neck. Someone was inside my home. David nodded once. "Not dramatic, just factual. Your sister has a key, correct, for emergencies," I said quietly. "But she's never used it. Not that I know of." "She used it," David said. "At least twice." My hands began shaking. I curled them into fists so he wouldn't notice. He didn't press. He just turned back to the data, scrolling through a flood of code. "Let's keep going." After another half hour, he found the rerouted alert number. The phone number used to intercept your banking alerts was a prepaid cell, bought with cash. "Can you trace it only to the store where it was purchased?" he said. "Convenience store near." He zoomed in on the map. "Your sister's neighborhood." Of course it was. I closed my eyes for a moment. The betrayal felt heavier, now sharper, like the truth was carving out pieces of me one by one. When I opened them again, David was already pulling up the transaction trail. "Let's follow the money." The first withdrawal was small, the next was larger, then larger still, but the part that made my head spin was where the money ended up. "Here," David said, pointing. "A transfer from your account to an intermediary account, then to this business account." I leaned forward, heart hammering. The account name was printed plainly on the screen, Marissa Hale Consulting. That's her company, I said. But it's not real. She told me she was doing freelance work. But there's no website, no clients. David nodded. It's functioning like a shell company, used to hold or move funds without drawing attention. I felt the room tilt. She used my savings to fund her fake business. David's face remained neutral, in part. But this isn't the final destination. He clicked again, revealing a second account. The name on this one hit harder. My chest tightened painfully. Thomas Carter Holdings. My father. My dad, I whispered. David gave a sympathetic nod. This is where a large portion of the money ended up. That suggests the business is in financial trouble. I pressed my hand against my forehead. He asked me to loan him money last month, twice. I said I needed time to think. He said I wasn't supporting the family. David didn't respond. He didn't have to. The data spoke louder than words. I stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. I pressed a hand against the counter to steady myself. I don't understand. Why didn't they just ask why? Steal it. David's voice was calm, almost gentle. People steal when they're desperate, or when they believe they're entitled. I swallowed hard. They always saw me as the responsible one, the one who'd be fine no matter what. And they exploited that, he said softly. I didn't want to cry, not in front of a forensic investigator, not over people who had clearly stopped valuing me long before today, but tears stung anyway. I blinked them back. There's more, David said after a moment. And I need you to see it. I sat back down, bracing myself. He pulled up the login logs again. This time he filtered by IP address. A new set of entries appeared, entries that didn't match either my home address or Marissa's apartment. These are from the family business office, David said. The timestamps landed like blows. Unauthorized login. Unauthorized login. Unauthorized login. All within 1 month. All during the hours I was in meetings or out running errands for the company. My throat tightened. My father's office. David nodded. The betrayal wasn't one person. It wasn't even two. It was all of them. A sudden knock at the door made my heart slam against my ribs. David shot me a look, quietly motioning for me to stay behind him. He walked to the door and glanced through the peephole. He relaxed slightly. Your neighbor, he murmured. When he opened the door, Mrs. Langford from across the hall stood there holding a small grocery bag and her keys. Oh good, you're home, she said breathlessly. I think I should tell you something. David stepped aside to let her in. She clutched the grocery bag tighter, her face pale. I didn't want to assume, she said nervously, but on Thursday, no two Thursdays ago, I saw your sister leaving your apartment. I figured you were home or that she had your permission, but now I felt something in my chest twist painfully. She was here while I was at work. Mrs. Langford nodded. She had a folder in her hand. It looked like papers. She walked out quickly, looking over her shoulder. My stomach dropped. Did you see anyone else? David asked, gently. Mrs. Langford hesitated, then nodded slowly. Your mother. She was waiting in the parking lot, in her car. My vision tunneled for a moment. Marissa had broken into my apartment. My mother had waited outside to help. I wasn't sure which burned worse, the betrayal or the orchestration. Thank you, I managed to whisper. Oh, honey, she said, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry. When she left, I sank into a chair. My knees felt too weak to hold me. David gave me a moment before sitting opposite me again. Lauren, he said softly, this isn't just theft. This is coordinated financial exploitation. I pressed my palms against my eyes. My own family. His voice stayed steady. We're going to document everything, and then we'll build a case strong enough that no one can twist the truth. I dropped my hands slowly, tears slipping down my cheeks despite my effort to hold them back. David's expression softened. You're not broken. You're not foolish. You were targeted by the people who should have protected you. I let myself breathe through the ache in my chest. One breath, then another. The truth hurt, but the truth also cleared the path forward. Okay, I whispered. Let's keep going. David opened his laptop again. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something rise inside me. Not fear, not anger. Resolve. David didn't waste any time after confirming the logins from my parents' office. He pulled his chair closer, gathering every file, every screenshot, every timestamp like he was building a fortress brick by brick. I sat beside him, arms crossed tightly, feeling both exposed and strangely steadier than before. Truth was painful, but clarity was grounding. He opened a new window on his laptop, the screen filling with device identifiers and geolocation data. Now, he said, we match patterns. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I nodded anyway. My breath felt shallow, like there wasn't enough air in the apartment for what was coming. David highlighted a row. This login here, unauthorized device, IP address 2 miles east, time 1142 a.m., status successful login. That's Marissa's neighborhood, I said quietly. Correct, he replied. But look at the next one, he clicked. Another red entry glowed on the screen. IP address Carter and Hale Construction Office. Time 1150 a.m. Unauthorized login attempt failed. My throat tightened, 8 minutes apart. 2 different locations. 2 different people, David confirmed. Likely your sister and your father. I pressed my palm against the table. The wood felt solid and cold. They were working together. He didn't say yes, but I read the confirmation in his expression. He turned the screen again. Now this is where it gets complicated. The next entry was routed through a VPN, a digital disguise. My pulse jumped. Someone tried to hide. David nodded. This is intentional obfuscation. It's not random, he zoomed in. Not everyone knows how to mask an IP, but someone with access to your father's office might. My mother, I breathed. She's the one who handled the administrative computer. It's possible, he said. We'll need to check timestamps against other activity. My eyes stung. I blinked rapidly, refusing to cry again. It wasn't sadness this time, it was disbelief curdling into something colder. David went back to scanning. His fingers flew over the keyboard, bringing up metadata I couldn't even pretend to understand. But then he paused. Lauren, look at this. Just the tone made me lean in. He highlighted a notification log. Your alert settings were changed at 2:11 a.m. 3 weeks ago. I was asleep, I said. Exactly. He clicked again. Password changed 15 minutes later. 6 failed attempts, then success. I frowned. Why failed attempts? Marissa would know my old password. David met my eyes. Unless your father tried it first and got it wrong. My stomach flipped. He tried to guess my password. David nodded. Someone who knew a lot about you but not enough about your security habits. Someone who assumed you'd use the same patterns your whole life. And then Marissa took over when he couldn't get in, I whispered. Correct. A sick heaviness formed in my chest. The pieces were falling together in a way that made my skin crawl. David pulled open a folder marked Alert Routing. Here's the number your alerts were rerouted to, he said. Let's map the purchase location. He typed quickly, then clicked a link. A map popped up. The marker hovered over a strip mall, a cheap convenience store, half a mile from Marissa's apartment. David didn't have to say it, but he did anyway, quietly. This took planning, not panic, not a mistake. I ran a hand through my hair. How long do you think they've been doing this? 6 weeks actively, he said, but the level of coordination likely longer. He closed the file. There's more. We need to look at your mail logs. My mail logs, David nodded. Your bank sends monthly summaries. We'll check if any were intercepted before the incident you noticed. I went to my hall closet and retrieved a small plastic bin of old mail. Most of it was mundane insurance paperwork, newsletters, donation requests. But then I found another envelope addressed from my bank, postmarked last month, sealed, untouched. I held it out. I never opened this, but it was in my mailbox. David put on gloves, actual gloves, and opened it carefully. Inside was a notice stating a suspicious login attempt from a location outside of Charleston. "That's odd," he murmured. "Why is that odd?" I asked. He held up the paper. "Because this login attempt didn't happen." Cold prickled down my spine. "What do you mean?" "It's fake," he said simply. "Fabricated. Meant to confuse you or justify future changes. They forged a letter from the bank." My voice trembled. "Yes," he said. "This isn't real bank formatting. Someone copied the template." I stared at the letter, my pulse pounding. My mother works with documents every day at the office. She would know how to do this. David didn't answer. He didn't need to. I sank into the living room couch and pressed my hands against my face. Why go this far?" David stood silently for a moment, then spoke with steady clarity. "People who feel entitled don't see lines, they see opportunities. And when their finances collapse, they look for the most accessible target." "Me," I whispered. "The responsible one. The one who saves. The one who doesn't ask for help." "Exactly," David said. I let out a shaky breath. "My family chose me because I was convenient." David's voice softened. "And because they assumed you wouldn't fight back." That line hit like a slap. A knock interrupted the moment. 2 short taps, then a pause. I froze. David held up a hand. He moved silently to the peephole, glanced out, then nodded for me to relax. Mrs. Patterson from next door stood in the hallway holding a casserole dish. "I didn't know if you'd eaten," she said when I opened the door. "I heard some commotion last night." "Are you okay?" David stepped back to give me space, letting me decide how much to say. "I'm dealing with family issues," I said. She frowned sympathetically. "Well, I'm here if you need anything. And this might mean nothing, but I saw your sister coming around here a few days ago. Early afternoon. She was carrying a stack of papers." I blinked. "Papers?" Mrs. Patterson nodded. "Maybe mail." She shoved them into her bag before I could say hello. My stomach turned. "Another piece of the puzzle. Thank you," I said quietly. "Really." She squeezed my hand before leaving. When I turned back to David, he was already typing. "That confirms it," he said. "Your mail was intercepted at least twice. Possibly more." I sank onto the couch again, overwhelmed. "So what happens now?" David packed up his equipment, then sat across from me. "Now we compile everything. Then Robert steps in legally. The evidence is strong, far stronger than most cases I see." I swallowed hard. "David, what do you think this really is?" He paused. Then spoke with the gravity of someone who had seen too many versions of this story. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Lauren. This is coordinated financial exploitation by multiple family members. And based on the data, your sister orchestrated the technical side. But she wasn't acting alone." The room felt unbearably quiet. I stared down at my hands, steady now, not shaking. For the first time since my bank account showed 0, the fear didn't suffocate me. It sharpened me. I looked up at David. "Okay," I said. "Let's finish what we started." He nodded once. And we dove back in. David returned the next morning with even more equipment, the kind I'd only ever seen in crime documentaries, portable drive scanners, cables, and a compact device he called a forensic bridge. He moved around my apartment with quiet purpose, checking the windows again, glancing at the dents on the back door, and then settling at the kitchen table where the documents still lay in organized rows. I watched him work, still exhausted from a night spent half awake listening for every creak, every passing car. "Before we continue," he said, powering up his laptop, "did anything else happen last night? Any calls, texts, knocks?" I hesitated. "Just one thing." I unlocked my phone and handed it to him. There was an attempted login to my bank account at 6:12 in the morning. I didn't touch it. David's eyes sharpened as he read the alert. "They're still trying." That's desperation. He typed rapidly, pulling up the metadata on the notification. Same device signature as before, someone using the unauthorized laptop. I felt the familiar cold settle in my chest, but it didn't paralyze me the way it had yesterday. Now it made me angry. David nodded once. Good. Let's trace the digital footprints. He plugged in my laptop and phone running extraction tools that pulled data into structured logs. Streams of numbers and coordinates flashed across his screens. I tried to follow, but the technical details blurred together. Instead, I watched his face. He didn't react much, but every now and then, his brow twitched in concentration. Here, he said suddenly. This is important. I leaned in. He was pointing at the unauthorized device profile, a Windows laptop, same as yesterday, but now he'd extracted the device's unique identifier. This is its fingerprint, he explained. Even if they mask their IP or use VPNs, this stays consistent. So you can track where it's been used, I asked. He nodded. Not the exact device, but every login event from it. He clicked, revealing a pattern of red highlighted entries. All 8 unauthorized logins came from 2 locations: Marissa's apartment complex and the office of Carter and Hale Construction. Your sister? I whispered. And my father. David didn't say yes, but he didn't need to. He clicked again, switching screens. Now for the router logs. A column of MAC addresses filled the page. 2 entries unrelated to any of my devices stood out immediately. These are the intrusions, he said. The time someone was inside your apartment. My breath caught. Twice, yes, David said. Both Thursdays, both within your work hours. They connected just long enough to confirm your network and pull data. Rage began to simmer beneath my ribs. She used my spare key. Most likely, he said. But she wasn't alone. Someone else had to coordinate. These logs don't lie. He moved to my bank app's internal security data. I want to show you the alert rerouting. He pulled up a screenshot he'd taken earlier, a phone number replacing mine in the alert settings. A number I didn't recognize. That's the burner phone, he said. Prepaid, bought with cash, activated 3 months ago. He zoomed in on the metadata. The store location appeared in a small window. Convenience Mart, Dorchester Road. That's 2 blocks from Marissa's building, I whispered. David nodded. She purchased it, or someone she trusted did. My throat tightened. My mother? He paused. The purchase location doesn't prove that, but the timeline supports the idea that more than one person was involved. I swallowed hard. So what's next? We follow the trail of the money itself. He opened another folder, Financial Pathway. A color-coded chart appeared showing the flow of money in curved lines. One line left my account, moved to an intermediary, then split one portion going to Marissa's consulting account, the other heading into another corporate account. I stared at the name. Thomas Carter Holdings. My father, I whispered again. He routed my money. Into his business, David nodded. The business is struggling. Transfers like these, disguised through intermediary accounts, are commonly used in small-scale laundering. The betrayal felt heavier, now sharper, more practiced. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was strategy. David clicked to the next screen. I want to show you your timeline. He'd built a color-coded calendar of my last 6 weeks. Every unauthorized login was marked in red. Every time I was away from home was highlighted in blue. Every family interaction, calls, text visits, was cataloged in yellow. This is the pattern, he said, pointing. Whenever you weren't home, someone acted. Whenever you questioned something, the attempts to cover their tracks increased. My eyes blurred with unwanted tears. I trusted them. David's voice softened. That's what makes this kind of exploitation the most painful. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number stopped digging. David's eyes flashed as he read it. Good. We document that too. I stared at the message, fingers trembling. They're watching me. They're panicking, David corrected. And panic is evidence. Before he could continue, a soft ping came from his laptop. He moved quickly, scanning the screen. This might be important, what I asked, leaning in. This is location metadata tied to yesterday's unauthorized attempts. He clicked again, cross-referencing it with cell tower data. He trailed off, eyes narrowing. What is it? I asked again. David turned the laptop toward me. The map showed a point of activity right over Carter and Hale construction. Your father logged in again yesterday. My stomach dropped. He didn't even try to hide it. No, David said. Because he didn't think he had to. My hands curled into fists. He thought I'd stay quiet. Like always. David nodded once. But you didn't. And now they're exposed. Before I could speak, another knock sounded at the door. Not the frantic pounding from earlier, this one was softer, tentative. David motioned for me to stay put and check the peephole again. It's another neighbor, he said. Mr. Halvorsen. I opened the door just enough to greet him. He shifted awkwardly, holding his cane with both hands. Sorry to bother you, he said, his voice low, but I thought I should tell you. I saw your sister here last Thursday. She went in when you weren't home. My chest tightened. You're sure? Oh yes, he said. She parked in your spot. Went inside with a folder full of papers. She was only there 20 minutes, but she looked nervous. I thanked him, and he left with a sympathetic nod. David closed his laptop slowly. That confirms the intrusions. A silence settled, a heavy, suffocating one. But beneath the weight, something steady emerged in me. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't losing my mind. They were stealing from me, lying to me, watching me, breaking in, and they thought I'd never fight back. David began packing up some of his tools, but left others connected. I'll finish consolidating everything when Robert arrives this afternoon. We'll prepare a preliminary report for the fraud unit. I sat back in my chair, inhaling deeply. What will happen to them? David paused. Legally, that depends on how they respond. But the evidence is overwhelming. And personally, I whispered. He met my eyes. That part is up to you. I nodded slowly. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Not because I was okay, but because something inside me had shifted, something solid, something unbreakable. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the quiet, responsible daughter they could rely on to swallow everything. I felt like someone who understood exactly what had been taken from her and exactly what she would do to get it back. Let's build the case, I said. David gave a small nod of approval. We weren't just uncovering the truth anymore. We were preparing for war. The knock at my front door wasn't loud, but it was sharp, 3 quick raps like someone impatient. I froze in the middle of the kitchen, one hand wrapped around a mug of coffee. I was too anxious to drink. David looked up from his laptop, brow tightening. He hadn't been expecting anyone. Neither had I, he whispered. Don't open it yet. I set the mug down and stepped silently toward the door. When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped so fast I had to grip the doorknob to steady myself. Marissa. She was pacing, arms folded tightly across her chest, her jaw clenched. Her eyes were red, either from crying or rage, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. David stepped behind me. Do you want to let her in? No, I whispered. But if I don't, she'll make a scene. Reluctantly, I unlocked the door and cracked it open, not wide, just enough to show my face. She pushed past me anyway. Seriously, she snapped, brushing past like she owned the place. You're really doing this? Calling lawyers, involving strangers. David straightened behind me, posture calm and assessing. Marissa's eyes flicked to him, narrowing. Who are you? She demanded. David didn't flinch. A consultant. A consultant, she mocked. Right. And I'm the Queen of England. I shut the door and leaned against it, crossing my arms. Why are you here, Marissa? Why am I here? She repeated, voice rising. Because you're blowing up the entire family, Lauren. You think involving outsiders is going to fix anything. Do you realize what you've started? David stepped subtly closer, not enough to provoke her, but enough to block her if she lunged. I appreciated it more than I could say. I inhaled slowly. You emptied my bank account. Marissa rolled her eyes. Oh my God, are you still on that? You weren't using that money. We needed it. There it was again. We. Like she was speaking on behalf of the whole family. My chest tightened, and she added, flicking her hair over her shoulder, "You should have trusted us. You made it worse by getting dramatic." David muttered under his breath, classic manipulation. Marissa's eyes snapped to him. "What did you just say?" He didn't respond, which only enraged her more. She turned fully toward me, stepping into my space. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused? Dad is losing it. Mom's been crying all night. And the business god, you have no idea what pressure Dad is under. You couldn't just help instead of help. I cut in. By letting you steal from me." Her nostrils flared. "It wasn't stealing." "Really?" I asked. "Then what was it?" Something dark flickered in her eyes, fear maybe, or guilt, but she covered it quickly with anger. "You're always like this," she snapped. "Selfish. Acting like you're the only victim. You have a good job, no real responsibilities, and you hoard money like a dragon. Meanwhile, we're struggling, and you just sit there pretending it's not your problem." It was like a punch. My breath stuttered. "You had no right. You weren't supposed to find out this fast," she blurted. The room went still. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to fade. My voice dropped. "What did you just say?" She froze, realizing her mistake. I didn't mean." David stepped forward. "Actually, you did." Marissa glared at him, then turned back to me. "Lauren, listen. If you just drop all this, we can fix it. Dad can reimburse you eventually. I can help transfer things back. We can pretend this, never know," I said. Her eyes sharpened. "What?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not letting this go." Her face twisted. "You think you're strong now? You think your fancy consultant friend is going to protect you?" David stepped forward again. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Don't tell me what to do," she barked at him, then rounded on me, jabbing a finger toward my chest. "Lauren, if you take this any further, you're going to regret it. Do you hear me? You will regret it." David moved instantly, stepping between us. "That's enough." Marissa looked over his shoulder, eyes wild, and hissed, "If you drag us through the mud, don't ever expect to be part of this family again." That didn't hurt the way she expected it to. Not after everything I'd learned. I stood straighter. "I'm not the one who ended this family," she scoffed, but her voice trembled now. "You're unbelievable," she pointed at me again. "Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you." She turned to leave, but not before muttering under her breath, "Ungrateful bitch." David opened the door and waited until she was storming down the hallway before closing it again. Then he locked it. Twice. He turned toward me. "Are you all right?" My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline, from anger, from the sheer audacity of what she'd said. "I'm fine," I said, even though my voice trembled. I can't believe she came here." David nodded. "She's scared. That's why she's escalating." A knock sounded again, one loud bang, then two smaller ones. My heart jumped, but David checked the peephole immediately. "It's the police," he said. I blinked. "The police?" He opened the door. Two officers stood there, one tall with graying hair, the other younger with a notepad already in hand. "Miss Carter?" the older one asked. "Yes," I said, pulling myself together. "I'm Lauren Carter." "I'm Officer Bennett. This is Officer Myers. We received a report from the bank regarding suspected financial exploitation and unauthorized account access. We'd like to ask you some questions." Marissa hadn't called the police. The bank had. Relief hit so suddenly my eyes stung. "Of course," I said. "Please come in." They stepped inside, their presence instantly grounding. Officer Bennett looked around, taking in the documents spread across the table, David's equipment, and the lingering tension in the air. "Has anyone threatened you recently?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "My sister. Just now. She said I'd regret going forward." Officer Myers wrote rapidly, "Verbal threat. Possible intimidation. She also showed up uninvited," David added. "Forced her way in. Elevated aggression." The officers exchanged a look. Officer Bennett turned back to me. "Miss Carter, you did the right thing calling an attorney." This appears to be a coordinated financial exploitation case. We take these very seriously. My throat tightened. I don't want to get my family arrested, he softened. You're not getting them arrested. They did that themselves. He sat at the table flipping open a folder. We'll need your statement as well as any documentation or logs showing unauthorized access. David slid a neatly organized folder across the table. We've compiled everything. The officer looked impressed. This will help our case significantly. As we worked through the paperwork, I realized something profound. I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't alone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to stand up to them. When the officers finally left, promising to follow up within the next 24 hours, the apartment felt different, lighter, steadier, safer. David glanced toward the door where Marissa had stood moments earlier. They're losing control, he said. That's why they're lashing out. I swallowed hard. Good. David raised an eyebrow. Good, I nodded slowly, the trembling in my hands finally slowing. Because it means they know I won't back down. He gave a small approving smile. Then let's keep going. And for the first time since this nightmare began, the fear didn't win. I did. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marissa standing in my doorway, red-eyed and furious, saying I'd regret what I was doing. Her words looped in my head like a storm siren. By dawn, the sky outside had gone pale gray, the kind that makes everything look washed out and hollow. I sat on the edge of my bed blanket wrapped around my shoulders, staring at the threatening note still lying on my nightstand. The handwriting was sloppy and rushed but unmistakable. Stop this. Last warning. My pulse skittered just looking at it, but fear was no longer the only thing inside me. Something else was growing underneath it, resolve cold and steady. A vibration from my phone cut through the early morning quiet. A text from an unknown number. You're making things worse for yourself. I exhaled, slowly reached for my phone and took a screenshot. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. Robert arrived just after 8, knocking softly before letting himself in. He wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s with dark hair, sharp eyes, and reading glasses perched at the end of her nose stepped in behind him, carrying a large case under one arm. Lauren, Robert said gently. This is Dr. Margaret Fowler. She's a forensic document examiner. She gave me a small, firm handshake. I've reviewed some of the documents your attorney sent over, but I'll need to examine everything in person. I gestured toward the kitchen table, which was already covered in stacks of papers, envelopes, and sticky notes. Everything's there. Robert took one look at me and frowned. You didn't sleep? No, I whispered. Not really, he nodded, then softened his voice. It's going to get easier after today. I wished I believed him. Doctor. Fowler moved with calm precision, setting up a magnifying lamp, small tools, and a portable spectral analysis device. When she pulled on latex gloves, my stomach tightened. It felt so surreal seeing a professional in my kitchen, analyzing my family's lies. Let's start with the authorization form, she said. I handed her the papers. She placed them beneath the magnifying lamp, leaning close. Your signature here, she pointed, is inconsistent with your other documents. David arrived a moment later, slipping inside quietly with his laptop. He nodded at Robert, then at me. Morning, ready for the next round? As ready as I'll ever be, I said. Doctor. Fowler continued examining the form. Notice the pressure variation. The beginning of the signature is heavy, meaning the writer hesitated. Your natural signature doesn't do that. And see this? She pointed to a faint break in the pen stroke. Multiple pen lifts. That's classic forgery. My throat constricted. So someone copied it. Yes, she said without hesitation. Someone with access to sample signatures of yours. Family. It had to be family. She scanned the date next. Different ink composition. Different pen entirely. The signature and the date were written at different times. A chill prickled across my skin. So it was staged. Yes, she said. First the signature, then the date. Before I could respond, David cleared his throat. I found something late last night. I turned to him. His expression had changed, more serious, more focused. What is it? He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. A device using your login credentials attempted access again around midnight. It was blocked because the bank froze everything. But the location A map popped up. Carter and Hale Construction Office. My father's office. My stomach lurched. They're still trying. David nodded. And that's not the only new development. He clicked another file. I found the phone used to reroute your alerts, and the convenience store where the burner phone was purchased. He zoomed in on the map. Marissa's neighborhood. Robert leaned over, jaw tightening. That helps establish intent. I rubbed my temples. I don't understand why they're still doing this. They know the bank flagged everything. They know the police are involved. David tapped his screen. Because they're panicking. And desperate. Before I could speak, someone cleared their throat gently. We all turned to see Mrs. Langford standing at my doorway with a casserole dish in hand, eyes wide at the sight of 3 professionals in my kitchen. "Oh, I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just thought you might need something warm." Robert opened the door for her. "You're not intruding. Please come in." She stepped inside, clutching the dish. "I remembered something else," she said nervously. "Your sister, she wasn't alone that day I mentioned. Your mother was with her. They looked upset, and your sister was carrying a stack of papers." My heartbeat sharpened. "Thank you," I said. "This helps a lot." Mrs. Langford nodded, then stepped back out quickly, apologizing again as she went. The moment the door closed, Robert said, "That puts your mother at the scene. It may connect her to the forgery." Hearing that made my stomach twist again. Betrayal from Marissa was expected at this point. From my mother, it carved deeper. David reopened another file. "There's more. I pulled metadata from your deleted email cache. I found this." He clicked an audio file. A muffled recording played Marissa's voice. "It's ready. Use this version. Keep your mother out of sight when they drop it off." I felt the room tilt. "That's... my mother helped deliver the forged documents." David nodded. "Yes, it appears so." My body felt numb. Robert exhaled slowly. "At this stage, we're looking at coordinated criminal activity, identity theft, forgery, obstruction, exploitation, and conspiracy." I sank into a chair and covered my mouth as the magnitude of everything washed over me. "They were supposed to love me," I whispered. Robert sat beside me. "People's choices have consequences. This isn't your failure. It's theirs." When I finally looked up again, David was closing his laptop. "There's one last thing." I braced myself. "What a new IP match," he said, pulling up a final map. "From yesterday morning." I stared at the red dot. It hovered over my parents' home. My knees weakened with the realization. My father accessed my account from their house. David nodded slowly. "Yes. He tested your credentials within hours of the bank freezing everything. It hit harder than any other detail we'd uncovered. Somehow, them using my spare key felt more forgivable than this my own father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, logging into my account after already knowing I had nothing left." I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself as the truth ripped through me. "Robert," whispered Lauren, "this goes deeper than we thought." A silence settled across the room, thick, suffocating, final. This wasn't just Marissa's scheme. This wasn't just my sister's betrayal. This was a family operation, a conspiracy built by the people who were supposed to protect me. And now that we finally saw all of it laid out in front of us, there was only one path forward. Fight back. Completely. And never look back again. By the time the morning of the hearing arrived, I had barely slept. My whole body felt wired, as if every nerve had been tuned too tight. I dressed slowly, navy blazer, black slacks, simple earrings, choosing the pieces that made me feel the most like myself. I didn't want power or intimidation. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth, Outside, the Charleston sky was thick with storm clouds, the kind that promised rain without delivering it yet. The air felt heavy, like the whole city was holding its breath. Robert picked me up just after 8. He stepped out of the car in a crisp suit, his face calm but focused. "Today goes differently than the last hearing," he said as I slid into the passenger's seat. "We're prepared." "They're not." I nodded, gripping my folder of documents. "I just want it over." "It will be," he said simply. When we arrived at the courthouse, David was already waiting inside the lobby with Dr. Fowler. Seeing the two of them together, the digital investigator and the forensic document expert, gave me a strange sense of safety. They were something my family never expected, evidence with a heartbeat. The moment we walked into the hallway outside the courtroom, the atmosphere changed. They were there, Marissa, my mother, my father, all standing with their attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Marissa's arms were folded, her eyes hard. My father's jaw was tight enough to crack. My mother looked pale, her lips pressed together like she was holding back tears or rage. The moment Marissa saw me, she smirked. "You really brought your whole circus, huh?" Robert stepped slightly in front of me. "Miss Carter has a legal right to representation. As do you," Marissa scoffed, flipping her hair. "Representation for what?" A temper tantrum. Her attorney touched her elbow. "Not here," he murmured. But she shrugged him off. "She thinks she can take us all down because she's Miss Independent now. It's pathetic." I clenched my jaw but stayed quiet. I wasn't giving her what she wanted. Robert leaned in. "Don't respond. She's unraveling." The opposing attorney approached Robert. "We're still open to discussing a settlement," he said smoothly. "There's no need to escalate this further." "There's nothing to discuss," Robert replied flatly. The attorney lowered his voice. "You're making a mistake." Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. "So are you if you think intimidation still works on her." Before anything else could be said, a bailiff stepped into the hallway. "All parties for Carter versus Carter, courtroom 3. My stomach dropped. This was happening. Inside, the courtroom looked smaller than I remembered. Wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, the faint smell of old varnish. Judge Whitford entered moments later, her expression unreadable. "Good morning," she said. "We are here to review evidence submitted in the matter of financial exploitation, unauthorized account access, and forgery. Counsel, proceed." Angela Torres, the prosecutor, stepped forward first. Her voice was steady. "Your Honor, we will present a sequence of evidence establishing that Miss Lauren Carter was the victim of a coordinated effort by multiple family members to access, drain, and redirect her finances without consent." Marissa's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is a family matter, not a criminal." Judge Whitford held up a hand. "Sit down, counselor. Your client's actions speak for themselves." My father visibly flinched. Angela continued. "First came David's testimony. The unauthorized logins originated from 2 locations, the sister's residence and the family business office," he explained, projecting the maps on a screen. "Here, 8 logins over 4 weeks, all during Miss Carter's work hours, indicating intentional timing." Marissa rolled her eyes. "Coincidence?" David ignored her. "Next, the rerouting of transaction alerts. The number used was a prepaid phone purchased near Miss Carter's sister's residence." He clicked again. "And the router logs show 2 intrusions into Miss Carter's home network, both while she was at work." Whispers rippled across the courtroom. He didn't stop there, he traced the money too. Funds were transferred first into a shell consulting account connected to Miss Marissa Carter, then to a second account under the father's corporate holdings. My father stiffened, eyes going cold. "And finally," David concluded, "this IP address," he pointed to the red dot, "is registered to the Carter family home." That login occurred the morning after Miss Carter discovered the missing funds. Judge Whitford scribbled notes. "Very thorough, Mr. Kim." Next came Dr. Fowler. She placed enlarged images of the forged authorization form under the courtroom projector. "Notice the pressure inconsistency," she said. "Miss Carter's natural signature flows smoothly. This one hesitates. These breaks," she pointed, "indicate multiple pen lifts. and the ink composition of the signature differs from the ink of the date. The date was added later. Marissa's attorney objected. Minor differences in handwriting are not overruled, Judge Whitford said firmly. Dr. Fowler continued. This is a forgery executed by someone with access to Miss Carter's personal documents. My mother's face crumpled. My father wouldn't look at me. Then Angela played the recording. Marissa's voice filled the courtroom, shaky and angry. You weren't using that money. We needed it more. And yeah, so what if I signed your name? You never help when it actually matters. The courtroom froze. When the recording ended, even Marissa looked stunned, like she hadn't realized how damning her own words were until they echoed through the speakers. Judge Whitford leaned forward. Miss Carter, do you deny making that statement? Marissa's voice cracked. I was upset. I didn't mean, did you or did you not sign your sister's name on a bank authorization form? The judge asked. Silence. A single tear slid down Marissa's cheek. Yes, she whispered. My father let out a strangled sound. My mother buried her face in her hands. The judge turned to him. And you, Mr. Carter? He swallowed hard. I only logged in because I thought, if we just borrowed a little. You accessed your daughter's account without permission. He looked at me for the first time. His eyes were hollow. Yes, he said quietly. My mother didn't even wait for a question. We were desperate, she choked out. The business was failing. We didn't mean to. Judge Whitford raised a hand. Enough. The silence was thick, suffocating. Finally, the judge said, Miss Lauren Carter, please take the stand. I stood feeling my legs tremble, but I walked to the witness box with my head high. Robert guided me through my testimony, the years of being the responsible child, the money I saved through disciplined sacrifice and long hours, the betrayal, the threats, the fear, and ultimately the resolve. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Judge Whitford closed her notebook. In light of the evidence, the confessions, and the clear pattern of exploitation, she said, I am granting a full freeze of the defendant's accounts, an order for immediate restitution, and a referral to the criminal division for charges of forgery, fraud, and financial exploitation. She turned her gaze toward my family. You have abused the trust of someone who had every reason to believe she was safe with you. That is unacceptable. Court is adjourned. Her gavel struck. Marissa broke into sobs. My mother reached for me, but I stepped back, and my father stared at the floor, shoulders shaking. Outside the courtroom, Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. You did it. For the first time in months, sunlight peeked through the storm clouds outside. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly, undeniably free. The days after the hearing felt strangely quiet, as if the world had suddenly gone muffled. The legal machinery was in motion now. Provisional orders issued, accounts frozen, the investigation handed off to the criminal division. But I was left with something I hadn't expected: space. For the first time in months, I wasn't running, scrambling, or questioning my own sanity. I woke up early the next morning and didn't immediately check my bank account. I took a shower without replaying Marissa's threats in my head. I brewed coffee without wondering what new horror the day would bring. It felt almost normal. Almost. Because beneath that thin layer of calm, a low hum of dread remained. If the last few weeks had taught me anything, it was that silence rarely meant safety. Silence meant people were recalculating. I spent the morning going over the restitution paperwork Robert had given me. 60% back within 6 months, he'd said. The rest in structured payments. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase what had been taken financially or emotionally, but it restored my foundation. And it gave me something I hadn't dared hope for: security. Around noon, I heard a soft knock at my door. I froze instinctively. The sound of a knock still sent a jolt down my spine. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw quiet eyes, a gentle smile, and a familiar casserole dish. Mrs. Langford. I let her in. I just wanted to check on you, she said, setting the dish down on my counter. You were so brave yesterday. I laughed, a tired sound. I didn't feel brave. Bravery rarely feels like bravery when you're living it, she said. It feels like terror, but you showed strength. And everyone in this building is proud of you. Something warm and unexpected spread through my chest. She stayed only a few minutes, but after she left, something odd happened. Another knock, a lighter one, hesitant. This time, it was Mr. Halverson leaning on his cane. Thought you might need someone to help move that box near your door. Looks heavy. It wasn't heavy. But I nodded anyway. And then Miss Ellery, from 2 floors down, showed up with homemade bread. Then, a young couple I barely knew offered to walk me to my car anytime I needed. Before the day was over, at least 7 neighbors had reached out. It stunned me. All this time I'd felt completely alone, and yet these people, quiet, ordinary, everyday people, had seen what was happening and wanted to support me. They cared. They noticed, and they weren't afraid to step in. The guilt that followed caught me off guard. Maybe I should have let people in sooner. Maybe I didn't have to carry all of it myself. Maybe independence didn't have to mean isolation. Maybe strength didn't mean solitude. That evening, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized instantly. Marissa's real name. I hadn't called her that in weeks, not since everything fell apart. For several seconds, I stared at the screen, debating. Then I picked up. Her voice was trembling. "Lauren, are you there?" I didn't answer immediately. She inhaled shakily. I wanted to explain. No, she exhaled. Explaining won't fix anything. I'm sorry. The word hung in the air between us like fragile glass. I said nothing. "I know sorry isn't enough," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. But you were right. About everything." Still, I didn't speak. "I'm not calling to beg you to drop the charges," she continued. "I'm calling because something broke in me these past weeks. I kept convincing myself we were borrowing, that it wasn't a big deal. That family means sharing." She swallowed. But it wasn't sharing, it was stealing. And I saw it in court. I heard myself in that recording. I sounded like someone I don't even recognize. There was a long pause. "I filed for divorce," she finally said. "From Ethan." I sat upright. Wait, what? She let out a humorless laugh. "He blamed me for everything, said the whole scheme was my mess. He said if I hadn't been so weak, none of it would have happened." My chest tightened. "That's not true, isn't it?" she asked quietly. "I let him do it. I helped him." I lied to myself so I could justify it. I closed my eyes. "Marissa, I'm in therapy," she said. "I've been going for 2 weeks, trying to figure out how I turned into someone who could do this." Silence again. A heavy one. Then, with a voice so small I almost thought I imagined it. "Do you hate me?" I swallowed hard. "No," she sobbed once, a sharp broken sound. "I thought you would. I thought you should." "I don't hate you," I said softly. "But this changed things." "I know," she whispered. "I know. And I don't expect us to go back to normal. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to change. Really change. Not because of the court, but because I can't live with who I became." Something in her voice made my throat ache. This wasn't the vindictive, defensive sister from my doorway. This was someone shattered by the consequences of her own actions. Before I could respond, she added, "I'm making my first restitution payment next week. It's small, but it's real. It's mine." For the first time, hope, thin, fragile, unsteady, threaded through her words. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. She sniffed. "I won't call again unless you want me to. Just take care of yourself, okay?" And the call ended. I stared at my phone long after the screen went dark. I didn't know if we'd ever repair our relationship. I didn't know if forgiveness would ever be possible. But her words changed something inside me, not because she apologized, but because she was willing to take responsibility. That night, for the first time since the nightmare began, I slept deeply. The next morning brought another kind of shift. Community. I arrived at the senior center where I'd been volunteering for years, expecting to fade quietly into my usual routine. But the moment I stepped inside, people gathered around me, kindness, support, concern. Word had spread. Elder exploitation is a growing problem, one woman said. I'm glad you took action. You're helping others by speaking up, another added. The director pulled me aside. We're planning a financial safety workshop. Would you be willing to speak about your experience? I think it could help a lot of people. At first, panic fluttered in my stomach, speaking about this publicly, sharing the humiliating truth. But then I thought of the woman last month who whispered that her daughter had drained her savings, the man who said his son pressured him to sign over property, the quiet sadness behind those confessions. If my pain could keep someone else safe. Yes, I said, I'll do it. And just like that, what had once been a story of betrayal began turning into something more powerful, a story of resilience, a story with purpose, a story that wasn't just mine anymore. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the sun set behind the Charleston rooftops. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. The air felt lighter, the colors brighter, the world calmer. I thought about my family, about loss, about boundaries, about healing that might or might not come. And then I thought about something David told me during the investigation. You're stronger than you think. The moment you stopped staying silent, everything changed. He was right. Silence breaks you. Truth rebuilds you. And now, piece by piece, I was rebuilding. Not just my finances, not just my independence, but myself. The version of me that survived this wouldn't be the same woman who had quietly carried the weight of her family for so many years. She would be someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knew her worth and would never let anyone take it again. Robert warned me that things might move quickly after the hearing, but I wasn't prepared for how abruptly my entire life shifted into legal motion. The criminal investigator assigned to my case called me early Monday morning. Her voice was steady, businesslike, a tone that somehow made the situation feel more real than anything so far. Miss Carter, I'm Detective Alvarez. I'll be overseeing the criminal portion of your case. I've reviewed the evidence submitted so far. We'll need to gather additional documentation, and I'll have some questions for you. Are you available today? I looked around my apartment, half-organized papers on the coffee table, legal folders lining the counter, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Yes, I said. I'm available. Good, she replied. I'll come to you, and please don't contact your family in the meantime. It's important the chain of evidence remains clean. No problem, I said quietly. I wasn't planning on it. She arrived an hour later. Detective Alvarez was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes, dark hair pulled into a low bun, and a calm presence that felt both grounding and precise. She greeted me with a firm handshake and placed a folder on the table. I want to start by saying this, she said. What you did reporting this, documenting it, it's not easy. Many cases like yours never get this far because the victim feels guilty or afraid. You showed strength most people don't see in themselves until it's too late. The unexpected kindness nearly undid me. I nodded, trying not to let my voice shake. Thank you. She opened her folder. Let's go through everything step by step. We spent the next hour reviewing timelines, digital evidence, account statements, text messages, even the threatening note Marissa had left on my windshield. Every detail mattered. Every inconsistency or manipulation from my family painted a clearer picture of intent. When we finally reached the forged authorization form, Detective Alvarez tapped it with her pen. This is a big one, she said. With Dr. Fowler's report confirming forgery and the ink dating inconsistent from the submission date, we have grounds to pursue a separate charge of falsifying financial documents. And that's serious, I asked. It's very serious, she said, especially when it's part of a coordinated scheme. Coordinated scheme. The words still made my stomach twist. When she left, promising to update me soon, I sat alone in my living room and felt something I hadn't felt since the beginning of this nightmare. Momentum. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was moving forward. Hours later, David arrived carrying his laptop and a stack of printouts. New updates, he announced, stepping inside. On what he spread the papers across my table. Transaction tracing. The deeper analysis came back from the bank's internal forensics unit. Lines and arrows filled the page, arrows connecting one account to another like a web being drawn in red ink. "This is where your money went," he said, pointing to the first box. "Into Marissa's Shell account. Then here, your father's corporate account. But this," he pointed to a third box, "is new. A transfer into an account registered to a business I'd never seen before, something called Bayline Supplies." I frowned. "What is that?" "A Shell," David said. "No operating website. No clients. No tax filings. But someone's been moving money in and out of it. Do you know who owns it?" He clicked on a file on his laptop, turning the screen toward me. The business owner was listed clearly. Thomas Hale. My mother's maiden name. My hands began to tremble. "That's my uncle." David raised an eyebrow. "Involved? I haven't talked to him in years," I whispered. "He had a falling out with the family a long time ago. I didn't think he even lived in the state anymore." David leaned forward. "Your mother might have used his name because she assumed it would be untraceable, or because she had access to documents with his information. But the signature on the business registration is forged." I blinked. "So she forged her own brother's name to create another account. That's what it looks like." My stomach churned. Why go that far?" David's answer was soft. "Because when people panic, they escalate." I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to steady my breathing. "This was bigger than I thought." David nodded. "And more deliberate." Before I had time to process that, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello?" I asked cautiously. A woman's voice responded, soft, familiar. "Lauren, this is Aunt Jenna." My chest tightened. Aunt Jenna, my mother's sister, someone I hadn't seen in years. She'd moved to Florida after a rift with the family decades ago. I hadn't thought about her in so long. She exhaled shakily. "I heard what happened. Through people who still talk. I wanted to say I'm so sorry, and I need to tell you something." I stiffened. "What is it?" "It's about your parents," she whispered. "About the business. About why they're in so much debt." I exchanged a glance with David, who nodded for me to keep going. "My sister, your mother, she's been using credit in other people's names for years. Family members mostly. She did it to me once. That's why I cut ties." The room spun slightly. "She did it to her own sister, yes," Aunt Jenna said. "And when the business started failing, they started borrowing from anyone they could. Anyone they could manipulate." My pulse hammered in my ears. "Why didn't anyone tell me you were the golden child?" she said softly. "Smart, responsible, always saving." They protected that image because they knew someday you'd be their fallback. A chill ran through me. Their backup plan. Exactly. My knees felt weak. I sat down heavily. Aunt Jenna took a shaky breath. "Your mother was always good with paperwork. Too good. She forged documents for your uncle once without him knowing. He nearly lost his house because of it." A heavy silence spread between us. I finally asked, "Why are you telling me this now?" Her voice cracked. "Because you deserve the truth. And because someone needed to stand with you." We spoke for another 5 minutes, her expressing regret, me trying not to cry. When the call ended, I felt like someone had opened a door inside me, letting in a flood of devastation and clarity. David placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "This isn't just about money anymore," he said. "This is systemic, a pattern. Your mother's been doing this for years." "And I was next," I whispered. "No," he corrected softly. "You were the target." A cold certainty settled in my chest. That night, when Robert came over for another meeting, I told him everything Aunt Jenna had revealed. He listened silently, then said, "This changes strategy. We need to expand the scope of the investigation." This wasn't a moment of desperation. This was a long-term pattern of exploitation. Will it help the criminal case, I asked? Robert nodded. Yes. It establishes prior behavior potential motive and shows this wasn't an isolated incident. I sat back exhausted but strangely grounded. What happens next? Next, Robert said, we prepare for criminal charges to be filed officially. It could happen soon. Very soon. For the first time, hearing those words didn't frighten me. It steadied me. Because the people who had spent years treating me like their resource, their safety net, their silent backup plan, were finally facing something they had spent their lives avoiding. Consequences. And this time, no forged signature or manipulative plea would save them. Not from the truth. Not from justice. And definitely not from me. The day the charges were officially filed felt eerily normal at first. I woke up, made coffee, and opened my curtains to soft Charleston sunlight filtering through the blinds. For a brief moment, I let myself enjoy the domestic quiet, the smell of roasted beans, the warmth on my face, the stillness of an apartment that finally felt like mine again. Then my phone rang. It was Robert. Lauren, he said, skipping any greeting. It's happening. The DA signed off on the charges this morning. My heart thudded once heavy and hollow. All of them, he confirmed. Forgery, financial exploitation, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and unauthorized access to protected accounts. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the chair. And they know they will, in about an hour, he said. Detective Alvarez is coordinating the service of warrants. I didn't speak for a long moment. I wasn't shocked. Nothing about this surprised me anymore. But hearing it stated plainly, hearing the finality of it, hit something inside me. Lauren, Robert said gently. Are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. That's normal, he replied. This is big. Big didn't begin to cover it. After he hung up, I sat there for several minutes, breathing in short, shaky bursts. The truth was real now, not just in forensic reports or courtroom testimony, but in legal charges that would follow my family into every corner of their future. There was no going back. Around 11, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Detective Alvarez. They've been notified, she said simply. My stomach twisted. How did they react? You don't need the details, she said. What matters is that the process is moving forward. You did the right thing. But I wanted the details. I wanted to know if my mother cried. If my father raged, if Marissa finally realized she wasn't untouchable. Instead, I forced myself to ask something else. What happens next? We proceed with arraignment, she said. Then the DA will negotiate possible plea deals. You won't need to attend unless you choose to. I don't want to be there, I said quickly. That's understandable. We hung up. I stood restless and uncertain, pacing my living room. For months, I had been running on adrenaline, fear and fury now. With the legal system taking over, all that was left was space. Space to feel everything I'd buried. The grief hit first. Not for the money, not for the betrayal, but for the family I thought I had. The illusion of it. The version of them I'd carried around like a childhood photograph, faded, idealized, but too precious to throw away. They weren't those people. Maybe they never had been. And letting go of that illusion felt like losing them all over again. I sat on the couch and cried deep, heaving sobs that felt like they were pulled from somewhere ancient inside me. Not because I regretted anything, but because doing the right thing doesn't spare you from pain. It only frees you from it. By afternoon, my tears had dried, leaving behind a strange clarity. I needed air. I walked out of my apartment, letting instinct guide me until I found myself at the community garden a few blocks away. It wasn't big, just a fenced patch of soil with raised beds and a few benches, but it was quiet. A woman I recognized from previous volunteer days waved. Lauren. Haven't seen you lately. I managed to smile. It's been a lot. She patted the bench beside her. Sit. I did. We talked about simple things, plants, the weather, the new couple who moved into the building. For a few blessed minutes, no one said the words sister parents or exploitation. I felt like a person again, not a victim in the middle of a legal case. Then she hesitated. I read the article in the local paper, she said softly. About elder exploitation in the community. About your case? Heat rushed to my cheeks. I didn't want it to be public. It needed to be, she said firmly. People stay silent because they think they're alone. You showed them they're not. I swallowed hard. It doesn't feel brave. It feels like breaking everything. Sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt, she said. You're rebuilding now. Her words stayed with me long after I left. Rebuilding. Maybe that was exactly what I'd been doing brick by brick without realizing it. When I got home, a text notification flashed across my screen. For one panicked second, I expected it to be another threat, another number I didn't recognize. But it wasn't. It was from Marissa. Please don't ignore this. I need to talk to you. My heart jumped. I shouldn't have replied. Every instinct told me to let it go unanswered. But something in me needed closure. What do you want? I typed. The reply came instantly. I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't fix it, but I need to say it anyway. I didn't respond. Another message appeared. I'm cooperating with the DA. I told them everything I did. Everything Dad did. And Mom. I'm not trying to save myself. I'm trying to make things right. My breath caught. Another message. I know you might never forgive me. I accept that. But I want you to know I'm not running anymore. I'm not lying anymore. I'm ready to take responsibility. I stared at the screen. Responsibility. The thing she'd avoided her whole life. For a moment I imagined replying something compassionate. But the words wouldn't come. So I typed only the truth. Actions matter, not words, she replied. Then I'll prove it. I set the phone down. Just then there was another knock on the door. My pulse spiked, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw Detective Alvarez. I opened the door confused. Is something wrong? She shook her head. Not wrong. Just wanted to update you in person and drop off these. She handed me a packet of documents. These are your official victims' rights resources. Support groups, financial counseling, security recommendations. I took them. Thank you. She paused, studying my face. You're doing better than most people in your position. I don't feel like it, I admitted. That's because you're still in the middle of it, she said. But you're not stuck anymore. You're moving forward. Before she left, she added one last thing. Your case will help others. Don't underestimate that. After she was gone, I sat at my kitchen table with the packet in front of me. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the floor. Moving forward. The phrase felt foreign, but it also felt possible. That night, I opened my laptop not to look at legal files or bank statements, but to start a document titled My Life Rebuilt. I didn't know what would go in it. Not yet, but it felt like the beginning of something new. Something mine. And for the first time since my world cracked open, the future felt less like a threat and more like a path. One I could finally walk without looking back. Spring arrived quietly that year, slipping into Charleston on warm breezes and early blossoms that appeared almost overnight. One morning I stepped onto my balcony and realized the jasmine vines along the railing had begun to bloom soft white petals, opening toward the sun, filling the air with a sweetness I hadn't smelled in months. I stood there longer than I meant to, letting the scent settle into my chest. Healing doesn't come with a trumpet blast. It comes like that quiet, soft patient. 8 months had passed since the day I found my bank account empty. 5 months since the courtroom hearing that changed everything. 2 months since the criminal charges were finalized and my family faced consequences I never imagined they would. A lot had changed, and so had I. The restitution payments arrived regularly. Now small amounts at first, then larger, as the asset liquidation process moved forward. It wasn't about the money anymore, but the consistency mattered. It meant the system was working. It meant my family couldn't hide behind excuses or tears. It meant accountability. What surprised me most wasn't the legal closure but the emotional one. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I used to be. I still felt sadness sometimes and grief and a deep, quiet mourning for the family I thought I had. But the rage, the panic, the instinct to apologize for taking up space, those things had loosened their grip on me. One Wednesday afternoon, I stood in the brightly lit community center, preparing to speak in front of a room of seniors and middle-aged adults. The workshop banner behind me read, "Protecting Yourself Financial Safety and Boundaries," hosted by the Charleston Senior Wellness Council. My palms were sweaty despite the cold air conditioning humming overhead. I smoothed my blouse, took a breath, and looked at the group gathered in front of me. 27 people. Faces lined with age and wisdom, eyes filled with concern and silent stories of their own. Mrs. Patterson had insisted I participate. "People need to hear this," she'd said. "You could save someone." I wasn't sure about saving anyone, but I'd learned one thing clearly. Silence only protects the people who cause harm. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "My name is Lauren Carter," I began. "And I'm here because trusting the wrong people almost cost me everything." Heads lifted, eyes sharpened with attention. I told them the story, not every painful detail, but enough for them to understand the warning signs. The late-night intrusions, the rerouted alerts, the unexplained withdrawals, the shifting excuses, the threats disguised as family loyalty. I watched their faces change: shock, empathy, recognition. When I finished, a man with a cane raised his hand. "My daughter's been asking for access to my accounts," he said quietly. "Said it'd make things easier. I've been thinking about letting her. Maybe I shouldn't." "Make sure you trust her actions, not just her words," I said gently. "And set boundaries. Boundaries aren't a punishment, they're protection." After the workshop, people lined up to speak with me privately. Some cried. Some thanked me. Some asked for advice. One woman hugged me so tightly I felt her heart beat against mine. "Your story gave me courage," she whispered. When I left the community center, I felt lighter than I had in months. That night, as I watered the small herb plants growing on my balcony, basil, mint, parsley, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I turned to see Marissa standing at the top landing, holding a small cardboard box. Her hair was shorter now, her expression unguarded. She looked tired but healthier, like someone who had been rebuilding too. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." She held out the box. "These are yours. Old photos, some documents I found. Things Mom never returned to you." I took the box, surprised by how steady my hands felt. "Thank you." She nodded, then swallowed hard. "I'm moving across town next week. Closer to my new job." "That's good," I said. "I'm glad you got the job." She stared at her shoes. "I've made every restitution payment on time." "I know." Another pause, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to say more. "I'm trying, Lauren. Really trying." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The sister who had betrayed me. The sister who had cried in the courtroom. The sister who was slowly, painfully rebuilding her life. "I know you are," I said. Her eyes filled instantly, but she blinked the tears away. "Maybe one day we can talk. Really talk." "Maybe," I said. And this time the word didn't feel like a dismissal. It felt like a possibility. When she finally walked away, the jasmine scent followed her down the stairs. Later that evening, I opened the box she'd given me. On top lay a photo of us, me at 8, her at 5, sitting on the beach. Hands sticky with melted ice cream, our mother smiling behind us. For the first time since everything happened, I didn't feel sick looking at it. I felt sad, fond, human. Accepting the past isn't the same as excusing it. I set the photo aside and pulled out my journal, the one I'd titled, "My Life Rebuilt." The pages were fuller now, filled with notes from therapy sessions, financial safety tips, reflections on boundaries, and scribbled reminders to be kind to myself. I wrote, "Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing what comes next, and I'm choosing myself." The next morning, the sun rose bright and warm, illuminating the caramel-colored walls of my living room. I brewed coffee in a clean mug, not the chipped one I used, during the worst weeks, and sat by the window with a steady feeling in my chest. Not fear, not grief, a quiet kind of strength, the kind that grows roots, the kind that doesn't crumble when the world shakes. The kind I wished I had years ago but am grateful to have now. And as I sat there breathing in the jasmine-scented air, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. If you've stayed with me all the way to the end of this journey, thank you. Truly. Stories like mine aren't easy to tell, but they matter, because they happen far more often than we think. And if this resonated with you, or reminded you of someone you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your perspective, or send this story to someone who might need it. And if you want more stories like this, stories about resilience, justice, betrayal, and rebuilding, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Here's to standing tall, protecting our dignity, and choosing ourselves no matter who tries to take that away.